Dude, yeah.
Hexlord Malacras, 8 mana, 5/5. Holy shit, that's bad. Battlecry. Add a copy of your opening hand to your hand, except this card.
Oh, no infinite feels bad, man.
Oh, what? This is one of the coolest cards in Hearthstone history. That, to me, is not a question. Its stats are shit, so it's a shit tempo play. The one thing to note about this card is that, well, A, Lich King is going to rotate, so that, like, Control Mage might want an 8-drop. B, we're getting pointed in the odd mage direction for current standard before we have rotation, which means it doesn't see play there. But the question really to me is getting 3 or somewhere between 2 to 3, because if this is in your opener, or 3 to 4, again, depending on if it's in your opener, cards in your hand, worth it to have such a tempo negative play? Like, is it good enough in the control matches? Because one thing we should know is, unlike Azalina, which, best card in Hearthstone, by the way, it doesn't replace your hand. It adds the cards to your hand, which is relevant. The problem is sometimes you've got this shitty hand, you FOMO, and your opening hand is like Gluttonous Ooze, Arcane Artificer, Dragon's Fury, and you're against Druid. They don't matter. They're not real cards. And this is an 8 mana 5/5 that added 3 cards to your hand that your opponent knows about because they use Deck Tracker. And you played these cards already. As much as I love this card, I'm not sold that it's very good. But I don't think it's bad either. One thing to know is it will never see play in Standard with a deck where Lich King is not in it, but Jaina is. And I feel like you can't play double 8-drop currently in Control Mage. And once Jaina rotates, why are you playing Control Mage, dude? So I think this is one of these cards that, like, if Lich King didn't exist, might see play as an 8-drop. But generally speaking, I just don't see this card, even though it's awesome. I'm gonna give it 5 stars because maybe someone just wants that extra tool against control mirrors.
Well, I'm already gonna dock you points because you forgot about its insane combination with the other Mage Legendary. So
yeah, but the problem is you're not playing them in the same deck, bud.
Oh, I do.
What you need? No, you're playing Odd Mage.
All right, but for real though, I think this card's okay. I think this card's decent value. I think you get 3 cards that you know traditionally, on average, are good because they were in your deck. So, on average, they're getting you cards you want. Is that worth 6 stats? That's the question. I think, on average, yes. But that doesn't make this card stellar. That makes it an interesting value play. This rewards having bad hands, sort of. Like, if you have a slow hand, this means Hexlord's going to draw you more bombs late game. It's going to give you a second Syndragosa. It's going to give you another Flame Strike if you need it. It's going to do things like that. So it's almost, it almost like gives you a forgiveness for, like, if you get to the point where you can play Hexlord and you had a really inefficient opening hand, you get rewarded by getting a lot more value given to you. Opposed to if you had a really strong early game, which signifies that you probably had a lot more efficient, low-cost cards, this card gives you less value. So that adds an interesting effect to the card. Overall, drawing 3 cards for 3 mana tacked onto a 5/5 is average. So I'm going to give this card a 6 out of 10, and I don't think it makes the cut in all of Mage decks, but I think if Control Mage exists and it wants to draw a bunch of cards, this is a good one to do it.
Alright. I think that this card has a little bit too high of variance surrounding it. So, add a copy of your opening hand to your hand when you play this card. But it can't include itself. So, there's a little bit of variance there between if you're on the play versus draw, right? There's variance if this card is ever in your opener, then it's strictly bad because not only it's really bad when this card's in your opener, right? Because not only will it not come back, but you have an 8-drop in your hand now, just sitting there. The other issue is that there's a lot of matchups where I'm not actually going to want 3 extra copies of a lot of these cards, right? If I'm playing against Druid and my opening hand is Flamestrike, Blizzard, Jaina, I just don't really need. I probably don't need 2 Jainas, and my AoEs are kind of redundant anyway. And then the other issue is that in order for this card to be good, I have to survive to when I'm playing this card, right? And if and you know, at 8 mana, it's probably very realistic to think, oh well, I'm the control mage with the nuts. I'm gonna go Dragon's Fury into Blizzard into Flamestrike into this thing, and then boom, more AoEs. You probably already won the game when you cleared the board 3 times and got to 8 mana. And I'm really trying to think. Now, there's obviously cards that are really good to dupe, like Meteor, Polymorph, any spot removal, Voodoo Doctor. Things all very, very good to dupe. Whereas the AoEs, I feel like if you have the AoEs on curve, that's kind of how you win the game, I think, a lot with Control Mage. So I'm not entirely sold on this card. The variance on it's very high, I think. Sometimes it's absolutely insane. Sometimes you add 3 copies of cards that end up being irrelevant in the matchup. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 because it is really high value to add at least 3 cards to your hand, right? The worst case scenario is you're on the play and this card's in your opening hand, and you get 2 cards back. But that doesn't change the fact that you have an 8 mana 5/5 in your deck that is going to take up spot in your hand. And yeah, I think maybe this card becomes playable if the meta becomes like really value heavy and like you're actually focusing less on like AoEs, and like I could see this card being good if you're duping like Lunamancer, right? Any kind of value minion, right? I think this card is good, but I think the variance curve's just a little too high for me to put this in my deck.
Well, kind of talking about variants, we got Janalar the Dragonhawk. 7 mana 4/4 Battlecraft. Your hero power dealt 8 damage this game. Summon Ragnaros the Firelord.
What is Ragnaros the Firelord, GHP? I've only been playing since Blackrock.
Thank you for asking, JT. It's an 8 mana 8/8 that cannot attack. But at the end of each turn, it deals 8 damage to a random target. How does that sound?
Target.
It's an enemy target. Yeah, you can't spork yourself to death with that. So, this is 7 mana 4/4 that if your hero power dealt 8 damage this game, summons a card that got Hall of Famed for a very good reason. So the thing I want to mention something. Odd Mage is a deck that people have tried to make work, but the payoff has not existed to play Odd. This means your hero power deals 2. And that means you only need to hero power 4 times to get this, instead of 8 times if you're playing Classic Control Mage. With that in mind, I think this is a really, 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 really good card in Odd Mage. And it's the payoff I think that deck might want. Obviously, if you dupe this card, it's insane, as you mentioned earlier. But getting access to Ragnaros is really good, and it's actually really easy to trigger this in Odd. We also get some tools for, like, even Mage, or like regular Control Mage if you want to rely on the hero power. That makes it a little easier than pushing it for, 8 times. But yeah, I think this card's really good. I think getting 12 power or 12 worth of stats on board is good. Ragnaros is a super swing card, and like it's also kind of hard to deal with this. It's kind of has that Spiteful Summoner effect, and we all know how powerful Spiteful is. But you're getting a Ragnaros, which is better than most Spiteful targets. So yeah, I think this is like a 9-star card, maybe a 10-star. I'm going to go with 9, though. I think Control Mage is going to absolutely love this card. And I think it might be what it takes to make us put Baku in our Control Mage decks. So yeah, I think this card's great.
So this, first, God, Janalai, is that...
Alright. Jan Alai?
That card it's the value's insane on it. I think if Odd Mage is a deck, it fell in love with this card. I think if Odd Mage is not a deck and Mage decides fireballs are too good, which might be the case, this is still a really good card because other tools we'll talk about still help this card become very feasible to activate. I think any way that we can trigger a Ragnaros when we play this card means we play what 24 stats for 7 mana and 8 of it has charge. Basically. So this card's insanely powerful. I'm going to give it a 9 because I don't think every Mage deck wants it. And that's kind of my cutoff for 10. 10 means basically the class runs the card.
Mm-hmm.
And this is right below that for me.
You guys covered pretty much everything I wanted to say about the card. So I'm going to take a moment to just quickly mention one other card in the set that I think puts this card over the top in the context of Odd Mage. And that is, it's pretty simple, so we don't have to talk about it right now. We'll talk about it at the end. But the effect is 1 mana, 1/1. Your next hero power deals 2 more damage. And this is literally just takes an entire clock off of how many times you have to hero power before you can play this card. Because I want to jam this card on turn 7. Like, I want to get a Ragnaros on 7 for, like, I want to get an 8 mana 8/8 that was Hall of Famed for 7 mana alongside a 4/4 on 7. That seems really, like, game winning to me. And taking an entire turn off that, because you'd have to ping 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have 1 turn between turns 2 and 7 that you can play, develop on the board, right? You need to do something else. You can't just hero power every turn. That's not going to be enough against a lot of stuff. But this card takes an entire turn off that so that you can develop for 2 out of those turns between turns. You can't do it on 2, but essentially between turns 3 and 7, or I guess 2 and then any one of the turns between 3 and 7, you can develop onto the board instead of have to use the hero power. And that just, I think that puts it over the top. Like, it's going to be enough tempo that you gain between turns 2 and 6 that if you get this enabled by turn 7, you're going to win the game a lot of the time, I think. Because the tempo is unreal. Because it's not like you stop doing stuff after you play this card. Then you just curve into Jaina, if you've drawn it by then. And this card is just... It's perfect for Odd Mage. It's absolutely perfect. I think I'm going to give it 9 as well, because it can't quite go into everything, but I think this will just create an archetype that was tier 3 and make it tier 1, personally.
Alright, Blast Wave. 5 mana, deal 2 to all minions, so that's Volcanic Push is how lots of play at 3 mana. Overkill, add a random mage spell to your hand. So, I think if we were in a world where we didn't care about Odd Mage, I think this card would be really bad, because I think I'll play Blizzard, Meteor, Flame Strike, or Dragon's Fury over it. I think in exactly the scenario of Odd Mage, where you lose Blizzard and Meteor, so you have and Polymorphs, you have Dragon's Fury and Flame Strike. I think this is playable in that deck because of because it's just another sweeper. The Overkill, I think, is a bit of flavor text a lot of the time, but I think the Overkill is not actually that hard to trigger, as Mage won't impact the board too much between, like, 1 and 5. I think this is, like, a 5 or 6 star card. Let's go with 5, because I think it'll see play in Odd Mage and nowhere else, so then it becomes, is Odd Mage good? And I don't think this is, like, anywhere near your top 5 cards in Odd Mage, but I think it will see the cut in that deck because it wants sweepers, and because it loses some of the best cards from regular Control Mage.
Yeah, I like this card. I don't know. It's not. I'm not crazy about it. I think the overkill is going to trigger a lot more than people think it will. Because if you blast wave and kill 4 minions and only overkill on one of them, that's still insanely good.
Yeah.
Like, because random mage spells overall are pretty darn good.
Yeah.
They're above average for sure.
So Plus, this card scales with spell power like nobody's business.
Yeah, I was wondering, what spell power do we have that's odd?
I don't know. I was thinking about good decks.
Azure Drake,
I'm kidding. But like, let's think about this. Thalnos.
Oh,
So if you play Thalnos, you now do 3 damage with Blast Wave to everything. And not only do you more likely overkill your opponent's minions, but you're guaranteed to draw a card off Thalnos and get a random mage spell from Thalnos because of the overkill with this. So it's pretty easy to make Blast Wave profitable for you with this card. I think it takes a little bit of forward thinking and making the deck worth it. But I think this card can be used to gain a lot of value. I'm gonna give it a 6.
Yeah. So you guys covered pretty much everything I was going to say. In regards to spell damage minions, we have a 3-mana 3/3 spell damage +1 if your deck has only odd cost cards, draw a card in Black Cat. So that seems like include.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I didn't think about that card with that.
They actually just printed a 3-mana 3/3 that draws spell damage. So if you're on the draw and you curve that 3/3 and they don't kill it, yikes, dude.
You win. Let's just be honest, you win. Because you'll get a bunch of cards. You'll win.
So, yeah.
I actually like that it kills Cat in that scenario. Like,
Yeah, exactly. It kills the cat, so you get at least one that actually doesn't overkill that. But 3 is a lot.
Probably overkill everything else, right?
Yeah.
Or a lot of it. And even one, it's same thing. Even one is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One
the fact
spell
that
is insane.
Mage gets a board sweeper that kind of replaces, well, not kind of, it almost directly replaces Blizzard, makes the archetype a lot more realistic.
I mean, we're talking a world where, like, this card can give you Blizzard. Like, you can get any odd, or any mage spell, so...
Mage cards are good.
I don't know if I'm ready to put it at 7, but I think it's a 6 because it is perfect for odd mage, and that's about it. I think Black Cat gets slotted into odd mage automatically if you're playing this card. The fact that the Black Cat exists makes this card a lot more playable, I think. I would have probably put it at 5 if it wasn't so good with spell damage. That's what made it a 6 for me. So yeah, very good card. Very just staple for odd mage. We'll see if it gets played anywhere else.
Splitting Image. 3-mana secret. When one of your minions is attacked, summon a copy of it. So let's imagine Mana Worm didn't get nerfed. This card would probably not be good in Tempo Mage.
Nope.
But what this card is good with is decks that, you copy your 5 or your 6 drop. So what it's asking you to do is put this in a mid-range mage deck. Why am I playing mid-range mage? What does that do? I don't see a home. And as much as this card is cool, and I imagine, I have on turn 7, I put Ragnaros in play, and I have a Splitting Image, and you didn't play around it, so you bought my Ragnaros, and now I've got another Ragnaros that you can't kill. Or I have Lich King in play, and I get 2 Lich Kings, sure. But I can't justify putting this card in my deck to do that without playing, like, the 2/3 that draws a secret and Curator Mage, but in that case, it's going to be those cards getting copied, and that's not worth the card in my deck over putting in, like, whatever one deals 6 to a minion or counterspell, things like that. I don't see a mid-range mage, and because of that, I don't think this card is going to be playable. I'm going to give it 3 stars because it's powerful, but not playable.
I agree with you. I think the best secret that I can compare this to is the Effigy secret.
Effigy's so much better.
Yeah, that was good. That's what basically where I was gonna get with that. Is like similar idea in the sense of like when your opponent tries to get rid of your minion, you get another minion. But the big thing I have an issue with Splitting Image is that it has to be attacked. So it has to be like either with a weapon or a minion going into it, which I think the higher level of competitive play you go, the more people play around that type of stuff. Spells of it getting a lot better, and this secret doesn't do anything with that. If they polymorph your minion or hex your minion, this secret becomes absolutely hilariously bad. It's too easy to play around this secret, and it can get you a loss of value too easily. I actually think it's a 2 out of 10, just because it's so easy to play around and it's not guaranteed value.
Yeah, I think this card's. I think I'm also gonna rate it a 2 out of 10 because even off of like any tempo play where you play the secret is just not good enough, right? You play it with a Kirin Mage, that's not good enough. You get it off the 4-drop 2/2 that gives you a secret into play, that's not good.
That's abysmal.
That's so terrible, right? So I've been trying to think of a scenario where this card's good.
It's like Lich King or Giants.
Yeah, it's like you have to already have something gigantic in play, and at that point, you're playing a 3-drop spell that doesn't do anything until a turn where, yeah, they're probably going to play around that because it's very clear what's going on. Especially if that's a card you've had in your hand for. If you didn't play out early, they can even just read what it is. So, yeah, I think it's 2 out of 10. Not constructive playable.
Alright.
Not even niche applicable. That's the problem.
Alright. Scorch, 4 mana, deal 4 to a minion. Costs 1 if you play an elemental last turn. This sounds awfully like Wing Blast. So Wing Blast is a good card in its deck. I also think Scorch is a good card in its elemental deck. Because this is going to be 1 mana, deal 4 to something. That's a good card. So in my opinion, if Elemental Mage is good, this is a 2 of in the deck that you don't really think too hard about. So I'm going to say it's a 7-star card because I don't know if Elemental Mage is good. But I think this is just a great card in that deck.
Yeah, I agree. This card's crazy good value in that deck. We'll go through, we'll see a couple of the card, one specific card coming up that I really like the idea of Elemental Mage, or at least trying it in the new set. But Scorch, really excited about that card. That's such an efficient removal spell, and 4 is a big number right now. The difference between 3 and 4 in this format is a lot. There's just a lot of X-Force. I think one of the most universal ones we would talk about is the Arcane Tyrants.
Yes.
1 mana kill Arcane Tyrants is really important when people are tempoing out 4/4s for free in the format.
Yeah.
Being able to kill a 4/4 for virtually the same amount, like almost nothing, 1, is super important. So when you can play a minion and Scorched or Tyrant, I think that's a huge tempo turn. I'm going to put this card as a 7 as well because obviously it's good in 1 deck and 1 deck only, and that's Elemental Mage. But in that deck, it's good.
I think I'm gonna rate this card 7 out of 10 as well. The only thing I don't think we talked about too much is I actually would not be sad at all to get this card off of a Primordial Glyph.
Definitely
2
not.
mana, deal 4 damage on a later turn, even discounted with Apprentice. It's just very powerful, and like then it would cost 0 with Apprentice, right? If you actually had play, if you're like a Firefly deck, if you're like a
like a
mid-rangey mage. Like I don't think Murlocs plays Glyph right now, right? They play Book of Sevens
Correct.
instead.
Yeah.
They play Book, Frostbolt, Fireball for spells.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I still think this card's just really, really good. Good hit off Glyph, and yeah, exactly the kind of tempo you want to generate in like an elemental list. It fills out your curve, right? Oftentimes the elementals synergies, like I feel like, are very designed to be like played out on curve. You want to curve out your elementals so they all get value off each other, and that can be done pretty mana efficiently. But if you miss 1 turn, you know, this lets you like fill in the mana really efficiently for strong tempo.
Alright, Pyromaniac. 3 mana, 3/4, whenever your hero power kills a minion, draw a card. 3 mana, 3/4 has generally been a good stat line in Hearthstone. And the effect is decent. Now, if you're playing regular Mage, I think this card is very medium. I think in Odd Mage, This is card draw if you need it. Although I don't know if that deck is a fatigue deck, that's a different conversation. I think if Odd Mage is not a fatigue deck, that this card is good in it because it gives you some card draw and your hero power is deal 2. Like, that kills things very easily. It's very easy to play this on 5 and draw a card. So, I guess it's like probably a 7 out of 10 card. Because in Odd Mage, it is really good. It's a good body, it's a good effect, and it's very easy to trigger.
I don't think it's as good as you think it is, even in Odd Mage. I think 3 mana, like a Spider Tank body, I think was pretty okay back when Spider Tank was like a card. And nowadays, I think a 3 mana 3/4 that doesn't do anything the turn it comes into play is pretty mediocre. This card effectively says to me 5 mana 3/4, deal 2 damage, draw a card and odd. Sometimes.
Is that good?
I don't think so. I think if it draws a card, I think it's maybe slightly above average for its mana cost, and if it doesn't draw a card, it's absolutely horrible. I'm going to give it a 4. I think people are going to try it and be disappointed by it.
I have a couple trains of thought on this card, and it kind of depends, yeah, like JHP was saying, on whether or not this is a deck or not. As we first started talking about this card, I remember that we were talking about Black Cat in the Odd Mage decks, and one difference between Black Cat and this card is that Black Cat is an unconditional card draw. You can't change the fact that you have all odd cards in your deck at any point in the game. So, you know, in that respect, you could have your only spell damage minion in the deck be a card that you will never play because you are playing to fatigue, right? Whereas this card, you could run out on curve. In the same vein, the last thing I want to be doing in a fatigue matchup is playing a 3 mana 3/4. That is so weak.
In a fatigue matchup, drawing cards is bad, and that's another thing.
Yeah.
It's a 3/4. It's a 3 out of 3/4 with downside.
So let's talk about the scenario where it's not fatigue. And in that case, I think Black Cat is a better card, personally. Because Black Cat immediately draws you a card the moment you play it, and is extremely threatening if it doesn't get removed. And I think those two things make up for the one stat on this card. The fact that Black Cat draws a card as soon as you draw it, yeah, I think puts it in way better contention than this card. So I think I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10, because it's definitely a good card. Like 3 mana 3/4, if you are able to ping something and draw a card, that's really good value. But that's way too slow for constructed. Both right now and probably in the future. Even in Odd Mage, I don't. It's just a little bit too slow, I think. So I'll give it a 5 out of 10.
Okay. Let's jump into our next card. Spirit of the Dragonhawk. 2 mana, steal for 1 turn, 0/3. Your hero power also targets adjacent minions.
Woo!
Just so you understand, they very, very, very smartly decided to price this so it cannot be played in odd.
Yes.
Because that would be insane.
Yep.
Yes, it would.
I think this is a decent card. It's okay. It's meant to be played on like turn 5 with this plus the 1-drop we're going to talk about, and deal 3 to 3 things is okay. Honestly, my concern is I don't know if this card has a home. It's not about is this a good card. This is a very, very good card. But I'm really concerned that, like, if Control Mage is going to be odd, this isn't playable, obviously. And I don't know if Control Mage wants this effect badly enough. It's not something I'm really sure of, because that deck doesn't really care about its hero power that much right now. So, I'm going to rate this a 6. I think it's powerful, but I have a feeling I'm never going to craft this card.
What did you say you're going to rate it?
6.
6?
Because it's super powerful. I'm wondering where it is.
I'm just going to be waiting for the highlight where a Mage somehow gets this card, and they make 3 water elementals.
Oh, God. Please don't make me sick.
But besides that, like, Christmas Land scenario, I think this card is incredibly lukewarm. Pinging, like, 1 damage over 3 minions is, like, okay for 4 mana. It's fine. It's not it's not exciting. I think it's a really big waste of a card in your deck. Because I don't even think it plus your hero power is enough. I think you need to do this plus the Fire Eater we talked about, or like get crazy value off of like Pyromaniac or something. It needs more synergy than just ping. I'm going to give it a 4 just because I don't see where it goes. Like the deck that will utilize hero power the best would be Odd, and it can't even go there. So
Yeah. Honestly, I'm looking at this card as a 2-mana 0/3 that on average is going to deal 2 damage, right? If you're using the regular Mage hero power, and that's probably just not good enough, honestly. And it's not like it has attack either. Once it's stealth, it's going to die on the board to any minions for no value. So, yeah, I think I'm going to put this card at 3 out of 10. That's really rough. I guess I'm going to put it at a 3 out of 10 still, because even with Fire Eater, like, you're taking so big of a tempo loss to play those cards just to get the value out of your hero power. And on the turns you're doing this, you could potentially be playing, like
Dragon's Fury.
and other, you could be coining out Dragon's Fury. Like, I will say that you can go Spirit of the Dragon Claw into like Daring plus Ping, and you have like a turn 3 AoE, cool. But
it costs you 2 cards.
It costs you 2 cards, and yeah, it's definitely not like free. It costs you 2 cards, and it's a 1/1. There are 1/1 and a 0/3 after the fact, and I think that makes them not good enough.
Arcanosaur.
Yeah.
6 mana, 3/3 elemental. If you play an elemental last turn, deal 3 to all other minions. So do know A, it's all other minions, and B, Dustbreaker, which is a completely insane card, is 4 mana. This, unless you have a dragon in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Now this card gets better with a certain 0 mana spell we're going to talk about. But I think this is a powerful enough card for this deck, because sometimes the deck gets behind on tempo. Like, it has just like the Bonfire Elemental and things like that, where it's just drawing cards, but it's not actually winning the game tempo-wise. And like, aggressive decks are kind of ignoring them at the time. And I think this is a good tool for it. That deck doesn't want to play Blizzard, Flamestrike, Dragon's Fury, etc. But it wants sweepers because it needs it. That's why that deck played Baron Geddon at times, besides it being insane with Jaina. But this is also insane with Jaina. So I think this card's good in Elemental Mage. I think it will find a home. That deck also has shitty 6-drops. So, yeah, I'm into it. I'll give it 7.
7. I was not a big fan of this card when I first saw it, and the more I read it, the more I was like, oh god, that deck just... This is like the one, even though it's a little... If it was 5, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
At 6, it's like a little too much for its effect. But the Elemental Mage deck is looking for something like this so bad that it would still play it. I think I give this card a 7 as well. I think it's going to be played as long as Elemental Mage is a thing. It's just the one thing that deck is missing, like you said, is a clean and efficient way to deal with an aggro deck, so they can't just keep running around their 5/5s. No, 7 out of 10 for me.
I have a really hard time with this card. I have to assume, like, you're playing this in a deck that doesn't have Dragon's Fury in it, right? You're all in on the elementals, because, otherwise you just play Dragon's Fury on 5. But you can't play Dragon's Fury and an elemental in the same turn, so you wouldn't play both of them. I feel like I really don't like losing... Like, I hate paying 2 more mana than I do for Dustbreaker. Like, even at 5... Like, at 5, this card would be ridiculous. But at 6... It doesn't generate that much tempo because you're not left with much on board. And this is almost certainly all you're going to be able to do with the turn. Also, it's probably going to be the only AoE in the entire deck your opponent has to play around, and it comes down after Fungalmancer.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm gonna. The problem is that every elemental deck will still play it because they need it. But I think I'm gonna put it at a 6 out of 10. I really don't think it's super amazing because it's 6 mana for a 3/3. The effect is obviously good, and the deck it was printed for wants it because it can't play the other AoEs really. But yeah, 6 out of 10 for me. I'm not quite sold.
Okay. Where's the file with the next card here? Daring Fire Eater. We keep talking about this card. 1 mana, 1/1. That's a sad day. Battlecry, your next hero power deals 2 more damage.
Not a good day.
So it's okay. On turn 3 in regular Mage, it's a 1 mana 1. It's 1 mana 1/1 deal 3 or 3 mana 1/1 deal 3. That's not a great card, but it's okay. In odd, it's a 3 mana 1/1 deal 4. It's pretty good. We're getting there. And if we play it with the 2-drop the target's adjacent minions, it's 5 mana deal 3 to 3 minions, which is okay. But it's after the fungal turn, unless you have coin.
Well, you can just play the stealth minion out, and then the next turn play Fire Eater.
Yeah, that's true. So you could do it on like turn 3 if you want.
Or 4 if you just break it up.
Yeah.
Decks probably normally don't have a way to deal with a 0/3 stealth on turn 2, right?
Yeah, they don't. Unless
So
they're
you can just,
packing
like,
Void
figure that
Ripper,
out.
and then you feel like an idiot.
Yeah. Void Ripper is going to be really interesting in this set with all the spirits.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
depending on how good they are, because we obviously know like Plague is still good and things like that. Void Ripper, yeah, that card's getting better. I think this card is okay, and that's all I think it is. I think it'll see play an Odd Mage, potentially, because it's just a really good swing turn, and it also increases your Ragnaros. So I'm gonna give it 5, because 5 stars, because I don't think it's anywhere near an all-star, but I think it will see enough play that it shouldn't be in the dumpster tier. But I don't think it's anywhere near like it's not in the first 20 cards you put in your deck. It's one of the cards you're just like, it's fine, it's in my deck, but I don't think it's great.
So when I read this card, I read it as a 3 mana Frostbolt, but instead of freezing, I get a 1/1.
Costs 1 more mana.
Yeah, so that's why, yeah, it's a 3 mana Frostbolt. But it does give you board presence. Not a lot, but like it. 1/1s do more than they look a lot of the time.
Yes.
I think this card is incredibly balanced. I think this is one of the most wide-ranged mage cards we've looked at that doesn't feel like it needs to go in a specific mage deck, and it's pretty decent in whatever mage deck you stick it in. Like it's it's just like build removal the card in a really efficient way. I'm going to give the card a 5 as well because I'm not blown away by it, but I see this card as like filling the last 4 to 6 slots in the deck in a lot of the time.
What was your rating, Tyrant?
Mine was 5.
5? You both rated it 5?
You're just about to be like 9 stars broken card with Jaina, right?
But I think this card's straight up probably like a 7. And the reason being that this card is basically turning my hero power into a Frostbolt, right? Minus the freezing text. Except I get a 1/1, which I think is actually huge. And it's also extremely flexible. So I think there are both regular mage decks that will want to play this card. Oh, also it's just like absolutely bonkers once you play Jaina, right? Like absolutely insane. But in Odd Mage, this card takes an entire turn clock off of the bird legendary that summons a rag, and for that reason, I'm gonna put it at a 7. Also, it's 4 damage over 3, which they printed a 4-drop spell this set that does that, but it's discounted if you play an elemental, and it's like I just have to play a 1-drop to upgrade my hero power, and that's only 3 mana. And the included synergy with the legendary, I think this card is like shoe in. Gotta play this in Odd Mage, and then it'll see play in a few other mage decks. So I think it's 7 out of 10. I think it's a very strong card.
Alright, you want to talk about strong cards?
It's as strong as a 1-drop can be, right?
Oh boy. Elemental Evocation. The next 0 mana cards.
I hadn't seen this card, and I want to change my rating on Arcane.
Yeah, it makes that's one of the reasons it makes that card so good. In my opinion, the next elemental you play this turn costs 2 less.
Just let me know when I can talk.
I'm
What's
fresh,
the-
so you guys are gonna be educating me.
What's the rules about our rating system? Are we allowed to go above?
No,
Alright,
you get
this is a 10-star card in my opinion.
Oh, we
Big-
say no, go ahead.
I think this is a 10-star card. Innervate, before it got nerfed, was easily a 10-star card. This isn't Innervate, but it's Innervate in a certain deck. And this is absurd in the Elemental Mage deck. They have so many good threats that some of them ramped out are genuinely oppressive. Baron Geddon is one that comes to my mind that, like, turn 5 Geddon against, like, Odd Paladin is oppressive. It also is against, like, Zoo and some other decks. Against aggressive decks, that's not, like, Odd Rogue, because that deck goes tall as well, which is weird. But I think this card is just bonkers. Like, it's doing so much powerful things. Like, hell, you could build your own Dustbreaker, and Dustbreaker is a 10 out of 10 card. I know it costs 2 cards now, but Dustbreaker's effect is so good. You can turn 3 Bonfire Elemental, and that's hard for a lot of decks to beat. Man, this card just does so many things that are powerful. Hell, turn 2 of the 4 mana 3/5 Taunt Divine Shield is probably not beatable for a lot of decks. I just think this card is so busted with what it does. It enables so many dumb combos and dumb turns that are so early that, yeah, I think this is a 10-star card, and I think everybody who disagrees is very wrong, but I'm very curious about JT telling me I'm wrong. So, take it away, Tyrant.
So I have good news for you. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong.
I didn't expect you to.
This card is insane. Insane for Mage. Like the what this card can do for the elemental synergy is bonkers. I just pulled up some like a list of elementals, and I'm gonna go down all the stupid things it does.
This is gonna be nutty.
A turn 2 water elemental.
Okay, that beats some
What
decks.
aggro deck beats that? Like what aggro deck beats a 3/6 that freezes things on turn 2? A 4 mana Arcanosaur. Duskbreaker was good. You have, like you said, you have the 5 mana Baron Geddon. We have 5 mana Blaze Caller, a 6/6 that just kills something on turn 5. Like, the value of this card is obscene. It's going to, if now granted, the one thing I'll say about this card is that if Elemental Mage is a horrible deck, we probably won't see this card. But that doesn't change the fact that this card is insanely powerful, and it will at one point do something very, very busted. I'm giving it a 10, and I think this card alone makes Elemental Mage one of the first things I'm going to try.
Well, not sure what more there is to say. Like, if you've ever shadow stepped and replayed a minion at a later point, you know how powerful it is to discount a minion by 2. And this card just does that without having to have your minion in play. I'm going to give this card a 9 out of 10 because it doesn't go in every mage deck, but it's just the absolute nuts in the deck that does play it. And I'm really excited. I really am excited to see somebody play this card and then play a 0 mana Arcane Tyrant. That's great. I'm really excited. Like,
wait.
Prep coin.
Oh. Okay. I wasn't really sure what you meant.
What else is there to say? I mean,
Yeah.
the card's insane. So, yeah, I'm waiting for the highlight reel where Chump plays a elemental evocation, and after playing like some 5-mana spell, and then just miss sequences. Like
Yeah,
crazy.
the play is meant to be like Flame Strike, Invocation, Baron Geddon,
Blast Wave, right?
yeah.
Sure. Oh yeah, no, yeah, you could do it that way too.
And then your Tyrant to do like, oops.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the ways that you screw up with this card now, because I've screwed up preparation a lot.
I haven't.
And oh man, it feels bad. Prep coin concede.
Yeah.
That's a play. But yeah, this card's like, in the elemental deck, it's higher than a 10 out of 10. And in every other mage deck, it probably doesn't see play. So for that reason, yeah, 9 out of 10.
I want to quickly mention that there's potential to do combo decks. Like, I believe there's a version of Quest combo mage that actually doesn't play the quest with this, but I'm not fully certain. Like, I'm sure there has to be some combo potential right now because those combos use elementals right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be some in the future. I mean, at the end of the day, like Hearthstone's designed to consider the fact that you have 10 mana per turn.
Yeah.
So anything that says that you have that you can play more than 10 mana worth of stuff in one turn, there's probably something you can do, even if it's only in wild. Like there's some combo with this card. You just have to find it.
Yeah. All right, our next card, Shrivla the Tiger. That's what I got, but it's definitely wrong. Maybe it's Shrivala? I don't know. Either way.
I think it's Shrivala, yeah.
Alright, 25 mana, 7/5, Divine Shield, Rush, Lifesteal. Costs 1 less for each mana you've spent on spells. So, I think that, like, obviously this card is designed for some sort of Control Paladin. A Control Paladin gets a few tools that we're going to go over. This is a really impactful card when it hits the board. And there's also some pretty, like, there's a lot of ways to abuse a card like this where it's such a tempo swing when you play it that the cost might actually be worth it. The question is, does tempo matter when you get late enough for this card to matter? Like, I assume this is a play on, like, probably like turn 11 or 13, something like that. I haven't done the math on, like, how easy it is to cast this, but, like, Consecrate, Equality, Spike Reach Deed, things like that are all, like, good for it. We also get a 2-mana spell that we're going to talk about later. That I think this card, like, is not that hard to cast. So I think Control Paladin probably wants this card. The question is Control Paladin good? Because it's a really high impact card. So I think this is probably like a 7-star card, assuming that you can cast this reasonably, like, by like turn, 11 or 12 or so. I don't expect it on turn 7 type of thing, but I want to be able to A, cast the card obviously, but B, I want to cast for like 5 to 7 mana probably for like, I don't want to cast it for more, so yeah, I'll say 7-star card.
That's fair. Man, I wish this was an even mana cost.
Same.
So bad. So this is this sounds like a bit of a stretch, I think, to a lot of classes. I think the only other class that wouldn't have a hard time with this is probably Mage.
Druid.
But well, the problem is Druid only has 4 big spells and it only wants to play like 2, maybe 3 of them a game.
Yeah, that's a good point. You don't cast 2 EYs.
Yeah, so like when I look at Shrivala, I see, so I want to play 2 Spike Road Steeds and a Kings. And that gets me to 16, so that's when like this card becomes playable at 9. That's a lot of cards. That's a lot of, like, those are like I don't want to say the better, but like the best cards that have a higher mana cost that Paladin will like play often and want to play aggressively. And that gets us to 9 mana. And so I think it's cost a little too much for it to be like tier 1, but I think it might see play as a finisher for a mid-range or late-game Paladin deck. But I think it's going to be a little bit underwhelming. Like it's going to come out a little later than when it's needed. I'm going to give it a 6. It's good, just not quite good enough. My eyes.
Yeah, I think in order for this card to be like reasonable to play, it has to cost at least 7 mana, possibly less. Like, I think for what this card does, I would play this card for 7 mana and feel pretty good about getting a 7/5 Divine Shield Rush Lifesteal, because that's a pretty big swing. That means I have to play 13 mana worth of spells before I can play this card. And that's a Spike Root Steed, and a Quality Const, and something else. So, like, I don't know. I think it's going to be really hard to play this card any earlier than, like, turn 10. And then, like, by that time, it's obviously going to be, you know, you can even get this card down to, 5 mana, and then it's really, really good. But I feel like if you're casting Quality Const and you're curving out Spike Root Steed, you're probably already doing very, very good, and you probably don't need this card. I think I'm going to rate this card 5 out of 10, because I actually just don't think the card's good enough for constructed play. It is a really good card, but... And I'm not necessarily convinced it will be either. Like, 13 mana is quite a bit.
Yeah, it's... The one thing I want to say about this a little bit is that the biggest problem with Control Paladin for a long time is they've had the survivability tools. They've had ways that equalize the board, but they've never really had a good finisher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think this card was meant to be that, to be like the reward for all the late game handling. But at the end of the day, all of that work for a 7/5 just like it's just not good enough, right? Like this card
just play
isn't the
Tyrion
finisher
next
needs.
turn, right? Like,
yeah.
Tyrion.
Why am I playing this over Tyrion or Lich King, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the card. So 5 out of 10 for me. Very cool card. And if you make this card cost any less than 7, it's bonkers. But that's just really hard to do.
Alright, a High Priest Thigh Cow. 3 mana.
Top 3 favorite cards for me.
3 mana, 3/4. Convert all but one of your hero's health into armor. So, what this card does is it enables Heal Paladin to some extent. We're going to get another card to help with that, where there's lots of healing in Paladin, but you're really, really shit at dealing damage to yourself currently. To be able to, put a Happy Ghoul into play or something. But this card just makes it so you have life to, without costing you life, you just get a bunch of armor instead. Which means you can also just play, like, if you're just planning to, like, play a cycle, there's a card in the set that we're going to talk about, this, Gain Full Life Draw card. If you're just going to play that, a lot of the time it's just draw a card, depending on the matchup, but then you get to have that 35 life, basically. So, I think this card is quite good. It enables an archetype, which is nice, and that archetype, like, I think was almost there, and it definitely got a lot better in this set, but at 3 mana, 3/4 with a really weird effect, but I think it's a good enough upside that this card will see play. So I think it's a 6-star card, because I don't think it's an all-star in any deck, but I think it's just a good enough card to make the cut. I'm not in love.
What did you say you were going to rate it?
6.
6. I like this card a lot. I look at this card, and it cracks me up a little bit, because back in the older, I guess this is still true, but back when, like, Priest was considered, like, very much like the control class, along with Warrior, but, like, Warrior was always kind of better because they could heal above 30.
Yeah.
This feels like what Priest wanted for so long. A way to basically go above 30 health and still, like, gain value from their hero power and all of their healing synergy. I'm kind of surprised it's in Paladin. But Paladin has, great healing tools as well. I love the effect of this card. I love the idea of being able to, once again, like, this enables a Control Paladin deck to go above 30 health effectively. It's a little gimmicky, but it creates that opportunity. And we'll see later through a couple other cards that there's going to be a little bit of synergy with hurting yourself. But it's a well-statted minion. It's a spider tank that comes out that basically lets you heal past 30. I like the idea. It's not incredibly powerful, but it's pretty efficient at what it does without sacrificing tempo. If Control Paladin is a thing, this will probably go in it, and I would put it at a 7. Because it enables a lot of powerful healing effect to get more value at different points in the game.
Yeah, I personally think this card is really, really powerful. There's just a lot of at almost no point. There's currently no Hearthstone cards that deal damage through armor that ignore armor. So there's basically no downside to turning all your health into armor. But there's so many small upsides. You basically make it so that every time you heal, it's essentially an opportunity to heal past 30 because you have the armor and you can heal. This card laughs at Alexstrasza. This card makes Alexstrasza look like one of the worst cards ever printed. If you're like, oh, I just curve out my High Priest, and if my opponent has an Alex in hand, they are wrecked.
That's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
This card... I mean, that's pretty much it. And then on top of that, it's a 3-mana 3/4, which is the standard stat line you have to have on a 3-drop for it to be playable. So it's a 3-mana 3/4 that just does a... It's really silly when you think about it, like, to turn all your health into armor, but I think it has a lot more application than people realize. What it really does is just give you a huge amount of health to heal, which... like we said, we're going to cover that in the cards that come up, how that might be relevant. But I love this card. It's really unique, and I think it's good enough. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 because I don't think every Paladin plays it. Even Paladin obviously can't play it. Like, Odd Paladin, I don't think wants it because they'd rather play a 3-drop that synergizes with their tokens or affects the opponent's board. But some sort of Control Paladin just wants this card really bad, and I really like it. So 7 out of 10 for me.
You say 7 out of 10?
Yeah, 7 out of 10.
Cool. Alright, let's jump into our next card. 7 mana, a new challenger. Discover a 6-cost minion, summon it with Taunt and Divine Shield. What's the best hit you can get off this?
Probably, what's his name?
Hungry It.
What's the 6-mana 4/5 that death rattles?
Oh, Karen and Hungry Etner, I think.
Karen's good. Ironically, Boulder Fist Ogre's pretty good.
Yeah, I think Boulder
Like,
Fist Ogre's
okay,
fine.
here's the weird thing about this card. So, you lose a mana to get a discovered minion, and it has Taunt and Divine Shield. So it gets Taunt and Divine Shield, although some might already have it. So I compare this card to Sunwalker, which is a 6-drop with these stats, and like Sunwalker hasn't seen a ton of play. Now obviously there are cards that have better stats than Sunwalker that you'd rather have Taunt and Divine Shield on. But I'm not convinced that this card is good, and the reason for it is there's a lot of bad 6-drops with low stats. You're also paying 7 mana for your 6-drop, and if you really want a 6-cost Taunt Divine Shield, why aren't you playing Sunwalker? Like, it's not like that's a bad card or anything, it's not. So, I think that's a very good card, actually. So, with that in mind, I would rather be playing Sunwalker all day, so I just think this card is pretty bad. I'm gonna give it 2 stars.
You're gonna give it 2?
I just don't see a home for this card, and I don't see why I would try to find a home either. Like, sure, I can high roll, but I can also get pools of, like, 3/3s. What?
Shirvala.
What's that?
The legendary that costs less for spells. You would play this over a minion every time.
Yeah, if you're playing Shirvala, this is like hand in hand.
Oh, that's an interesting call.
Yeah, that's one reason to play this over a minion.
Okay, so that's an incentive.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll give it 3 for that, because it could see play in... If you want to have a spell-driven, or spell-driven Control Paladin, sure. But I just don't see this card being, like, actively good.
Okay, I think it's interesting because you bring up my biggest problem with this card, and that like 6-cost minions are like historically kind of understated and come with like a cool effect.
Yeah.
So now the problem is not always, will that effect always be relevant to what we're doing? Now the good news is it's Discover. It's not a random minion, right?
Yeah, you can't get a
So, like,
1/1 unless you see triple 1/1, which I don't think is possible.
right. So like that's the good news is this card isn't like Summoner that can just whiff with a random minion. And Divine Shield I think Divine Shield is often looked at to be worth about half a mana.
Yeah.
And so is Taunt. So like the idea is you're paying one more mana, but you're getting those two things stapled onto another random 6-drop.
Yeah.
I think this card is fairly well balanced. I don't think it's a blowout to anything, but it's a decent value card. I agree that I don't know if I want a new challenger unless I'm playing Shirvala. Because I agree that if I want to discover a 6-drop with Taunt and Divine Shield, like why not go with a 100% consistency of Sunwalker? I'm going to give it a 5 because I don't want to undervalue Divine Shield and the fact that we can put it on a minion of our choice with Discover. But 7 mana is a lot. And I don't think Paladins are going that direction right now unless Shirvala becomes the next hotness. So 5 for me.
Yeah, only thing I have to add is that I don't. Somebody made a sheet that explained like the percentage chance that you get the good stuff versus the medium versus the bad. There's actually a pretty decent amount of bad minions to hit off a new challenger, and I don't think the risk of low rolling is worth the payoff of high rolling, because more often than not you're going to low roll. So at that point you'd rather exactly just play Sunwalker, something that's 100%. So card's interesting. It's definitely balanced. That's a good way to put it. It's definitely not overpowered or oppressive in any way. It's just okay. So I'd give it a 5 out of 10.
Okay, let's jump into our next card. Mortal Prelate. Death Rattle, shuffle this into your deck. It keeps any enchantments.
Oh boy.
So, I don't know. Look, you two, have you been playing Hearthstone the last little while? Any chance? Do you know of any cards that are like this? There's one on tip of my tongue, but I can't figure it out. It wouldn't be Kingsbane.
Has it?
It wouldn't be Kingsbane, would it?
Oh, yeah. Kingsbane has this.
Wow. Well, here's the problem. You know when you're that control deck and you're playing as Kingsbane, you're like, I can't do anything? Part of the reason for that is because you can't silence the damn Kingsbane. I can silence this. Because of that, I think this card is very, very cute, and it's probably decent at Quest Paladin, because it suits the entire deck. But that deck is built to die to silence, so I get it. I think this card is probably really bad outside of that. There is some really cool stuff, like you could play it with the Undertaker, and then the Undertaker shuffles in and keeps all the death rattles, because they count as enchantments. But as a standalone card, I think this is just a really weak card and will only see play in Quest Paladin, and that deck is crap. Because, like, you're not doing something powerful here, and it's not like Kingsbane, where not only you can pull it out of your deck, but you can't silence it, and, like, giving this lifesteal is also quite difficult. So yeah, I just don't see this card being good in anywhere, so I'm gonna give it 4 stars because it has the synergy with the Undertaker, and that might be relevant enough if the Undertaker is like suddenly seeing a bunch of play, but we'll have to talk about that card later.
I think this card isn't the nuts that some people are saying, but I do think it's a little better than a 4. The big thing with Paladin right now, and I think what makes me feel a little better about the fact that this card's weak to silence, is the redundancy that a lot of the I'm gonna call it a mid-range Paladin list. You know, it's very similar to like the control mid-range list that Tice has been running and the even Paladin lists that have been moving around. There's a lot of redundancy in the deck. Like, there's easily a half a dozen effects in those decks that you want to silence. And no one's packing 6 silences.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So what you're saying with this card is you have to answer this one, and when you do, I have other things. So it really it asks a lot of the other decks and how they want to utilize their silence. You know, if your opponent silences your Immortal Prelate, then you just move on and kings your next target.
Yeah.
So I don't think that there's a big loss that it's weak to silence because of the class it's in, because of how much redundancy Paladin has when it comes to that. It's pretty fair cost. You know, 1/3 isn't bad for 2. I think it's a little understated considering it's begging for investment to be worth anything. But I think people are going to run it just because it'll be decent value with like kings, and if you silence my minion with kings, then cool. Then I guess I get to have Spikered Steed. So I'm going to give this card a 7. I think this card's good, and I think it's playable. But I think it will just be another tool of redundancy for Paladin to be able to get through a wall of silences.
I think I'm going to give this card a 6. Split the difference with you guys. I think the effect is very strong. Anything that you cast on this just is there until it gets silenced. So, I mean, there's not a ton of options in the lower costs. We have, like, Blessing of Might, and that's probably not going in the deck that plays this card. I guess, like, maybe Blessing of Wisdom, that seems too slow. Like, it's mostly just for the Blessing of Kings and the Spikered Steed, right? And I do agree that, you know, if your opponent just has 2 silences early, you're always going to get something off that they can't silence. It could be a Valinir Death Rattle trigger, or, like, second speed after you've drawn a couple other spells. Like, and I think the thing is that if one of those spells was going to get silenced, it would always happen, right? Even if this minion wasn't there. And the fact that we're putting it on this minion that would get silenced anyway means that we're just accepting that, like, it would be the same outcome, right? They're going to remove whatever card we play on the minion, and we're always left with a 2-mana 1/3. And a lot of the time, you're just going to be playing a 2-mana 1/3. So I guess I'm just trying to think, is it worth putting my card in this deck for the matchups where they can't silence it? Because there are matchups that don't play silence.
Particularly the most common, what's considered top decks right now, which is Druid and Hunter.
Yeah, neither of them do.
Shoot, no, I think there's a bunch of other stuff, right? Like, Priest doesn't play it unless they discover it, or unless
Priest doesn't need to, though, because they have the Scream.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this card is close. I just don't think I would put it in my deck personally. Like, even if I was playing even Paladin, which does have a bunch of buff spells in it, I'm just not sure I can justify the 1/3. Because, like, I'm already not very happy about the stat line on Kangor, right? But Kangor at least has Divine Shield. It at least takes 2 hits to kill. And I think a lot of the times, like, it's going to be really hard to play this on turn 2 and have it survive.
That's
But if you can make that happen consistently, or maybe you hold it for later and use it as a value engine, you know, like in certain matchups where you're just like, I'm gonna play this and kings it and know that you can't deal with it, or steeds it, and then I'll draw it later and you're gonna be unhappy. So I'll give it a 6 out of 10.
It is worth mentioning, and I'm not saying like this is to try to game pull on it. It's just I don't even know how relevant it is, but it is a neat little thing to remember that once this gets shuffled back into your deck with any sort of buff, Call to Arms will pull it out with the buffs.
Yeah, so it's insane with Call to Arms. I just want to quickly ask, do you guys think this is looking for a home in even Paladin or some other deck? If it's going to find a home.
I'm not putting it in my even Paladin, personally. I'm not sold.
I think that's where it's trying to be, or in some sort of mid-range paladin list in general. Like Tice has a mid-range paladin list that isn't even right now, that goes up to like Uther.
Okay.
That plays very similarly to even paladin, just with I get to play better cards with a worse hero power.
Yeah.
And I think this card wants to be in either one of those decks. The question will be is if the format allows you to play a 2-mana 1/3 opposed to something that's more aggressive earlier in your curve.
So let's move on to another card. Far Cry Battle Axe. It's a 5-mana 3/3 weapon. Overkill. Give a minion your hand +2/+2. So a 5-mana 3/3 weapon is pretty underwhelming. Assassin's Blade doesn't see any play. And I don't think Paladin particularly wants more weapons. It already has Vine Cleaver, it has Valinir, it has True Silver, it has one we're gonna talk about later. It also has Champion's Ball. I believe that's the card name. The 3-mana weapon.
Unidentified Maul.
Unidentified Maul.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this card is better than any of them, and there's definitely such thing as playing too many weapons. You hear plenty of times people play events and stuff, and they're like, yeah, I lost the game because I got weapon flooded. And that's a real thing where they just kind of sit in your hand. And I think this is worse than most of the other weapons. I do think it's an okay weapon. 3/3 for 5 is okay. I think the overkill is really hard to trigger though. And it requires you to also have minions in hand. Plus being able to overkill when it's only 3 attack is actually pretty hard on turn 5. So I think this is, I'm going to say a 3-star card. I'm really not seeing a world where this card's going to see a bunch of play. Ironically, it actually like synergizes cool with the card we just saw, but so does Valinir. And I can't see Odd Paladin wanting to play this over its other cards, and I can't see mid-range Paladin playing this card over like it's going to play True Silver, it's going to play Vine Cleaver, for example. And like there is too many weapons. There's definitely a point of that. So I just don't really see the card. So yeah, I'll give it. Yeah, I'll go 3 stars.
This might be the first time I'm the first negative voice on a card. I hate this card so much.
Say it louder.
I think this card. I've really thought about this card and said, how is this card good? Where is it good? Immediately 5 mana for a 3/3 weapon is undervalued, right?
Yeah.
We already know that. The overkill. Now, my biggest problem with the overkill is not that the overkill isn't good enough, which is it's mediocre in my opinion. It's like fine, but earlier I think I touched on this. Is the key numbers right now in this format for health is 3 and 4, and that means that this axe is likely never going to get overkill on a relevant minion without investing some other resource first. And that means you're spending at least part of a card to get overkill on this weapon, and I don't even think the overkill on it is that good. Besides the fact that, add on to all of that, Paladin has like 25 amazing weapons. I have no idea why I would run Silver Sword in a heartbeat over this card if I was a minion focused deck. It's a 1. I'm rating it 1.
Is that your first one?
No, I rated a bunch of cards 1 in Hunter.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. Likewise with everyone else here. But yeah, I give this card a 1. Outside of Arena, I just don't see where I would put this card in.
I think this is maybe, Blizzard printing, Ice Rager so that you can see Ice Rager next to Magma Rager and go, huh, I understand at least something about this game. That Ice Rager is better than Magma Rager. And so you're gonna see True Silver right at the end of your 4 drops, right? Because it's a T.
Yeah.
And you're gonna flip the page over and see Faraki Battle Axe and go, "Oh my god, this is so bad."
That's so funny.
I'm gonna put True Silver in my deck. Yeah. I don't even know. Like, I think I'm gonna rate it a 2. Like, I don't even think if I get an overkill, it makes up for how badly statted this weapon is. No, that's a 1, dude. This card's a 1.
Wait,
This
what
is
did I rate it?
I think
You
it's
rated
a
it a 3.
3. I think
I can't live with that.
2 or 1.
It's a. I'll go to 2 because I'll seem like I'm just joining you guys if I say 1. I think the card is terrible.
It has 1 more charge than True Silver, which is kind of neato.
Yeah, like that
1
matters.
More mana. And
All right.
less attack.
So let's look at that. 1 more damage for 1 more mana. That's like horrible, right, for weapons?
Yeah.
And you lose 4 extra life, basically.
Yeah.
It's a turn later.
Let's talk about the next card. We agree that one's crap. 4 mana 4/4 Xandar Templar, who has amazing flavor text, by the way. Battlecry, if you've restored 10 health this game, gain +4/+4 taunt. So be a 4 mana 8/8 with taunt if you've restored 10 health this game. This seems like a payoff. A really good payoff to heal Paladin. A 4 mana 4/4 is understated, but it's like, you don't complain that often about 4 mana 4/4s. It's just, not exactly what you want to be doing. So that's not terrible. And when you get the Battlecry, 4 mana 8/8s are kind of insane. Like, the meme is 4 mana 7/7s, and most of those have downsides. Like, this card doesn't have a downside. And because of that, I think this is probably like, you know what, if Heal Paladin's going to be a thing, and they're giving it the tools to be, I'm going to say this is an 8-star card. I think it's a really, really powerful card. And I think if you're in Heal Paladin, you're playing 2 of this card, and you're going to be damn happy about it. It's doing too much, and the tempo swing, like when you just play this as an 8/8 with taunt, it's insane.
Yeah, I'm in your boat. I love this card. When the first thing I saw this card was Paladin Hooked Reaver.
Yeah, Hook Reaver's dumb.
And, yeah, except this is like the payoff. I'm not gonna. We can discuss if like the difficulty of triggering the battle cry, but at the end of the day, this one's has a bigger payoff. It gets bigger than their Hooked Reaver. So I think that's worth noting. It's like an even bigger payoff than that card, and that card's already nuts. Like, that card's amazing. And plus we're gonna look at a few other cards that go, well, 1 more card in this review that's going to make this card look a lot better. But True Silver is a card. And even Paladin right now, Corpse Taker and healing effects are a thing. Ziliax is a thing.
This card makes Kangor look really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, this card makes a lot of things look really good. I'm going to put this at an 8, and I'm probably going to say I wish I had the guts to put it at a 9 later, but it's good.
I'll do it. I'll put it at a 9. I think this card, I think if you look at the tools we're getting for like a control Paladin shell, like this card even has high rolls within your deck, right? Sometimes you just curve the High Priest that makes all your health armor into this card. It's just an aggressive curve, right? 3/4 into 4/4, and then like you have 2 pretty big minions on curve. If they don't remove one of them, you blessing it up, and it's game on. Or in the same vein, you could have High Priest early, and then Corpse Taker into a blessing. That alone triggers this card. Like, Corpse Taker alone is 6 heal with this card if you already were able to deal damage to yourself. I think this card almost certainly makes the archetype viable. Some sort of control Paladin that wants to heal in the mid game and then tempo you out after like an equality comps or something. And the fact that they're 8/8s is huge. That's the biggest stat in the standard format. The biggest things you have to worry about are generally 8/8s. Cindergosa, King Crush, Mountain Giants, and then notably it outclasses the opponent's Hooked Reavers. So I'll give it a 9. I'll do it. I really think this card is like the glue to making some sort of control Paladin viable.
Okay, Spirit of the Tiger. 4 mana still for 1 turn, 0/3. After you cast a spell, summon a tiger with stats equal to its cost. One nice thing is you don't have to cast the spell on this minion. Which is definitely something I didn't realize when I first saw the card. I'm just going to start out and say in my opinion, it's a 6. I don't think it's anything too special, but I've heard certain people who happened to be in this voice call said they really want to play it in their even Paladin decks and things like that. And I can see it, you know. If you play this and then Blessing next turn, you get a 4/4, a 4/7, plus your hero power.
Go on.
It's definitely best with Spike Ridge Steed because you have a 5/9, or sorry, a 2/9, and then you'll also get a 6/6, which is pretty good. So I think the card is solid. I really don't love it. But they're definitely doing a good job at if they want to push play your shit on a minion Paladin. So I guess you just play Quest Paladin. If they're pushing that, I think this is a solid card in the archetype. I actually think this card, you really just want to get one big spell instead of a bunch of cheap spells, though, which is the opposite for play Quest Paladin. Which is kind of awkward. Like, if you coin, you get nothing. If you play Blessing of whatever the Blessing of Might, you get a 1/1, and that sucks. I think you need to at least play Blessing of Kings or better for this to be a real card the turn after you play it. So, I'm gonna say it's a 6. I don't think it's anything special, but I know a lot of people are gonna try the card and maybe it finds a home, but I'm personally not entirely sold that this is actually good enough. So, take it away.
I've been battling how good I think this card is for a while. One of the biggest strengths of this card is that it's the thing, and we kind of talked about this with Immortal Prelate. One of the weaknesses with the Paladin strategy right now is silence. Well, this basically gives you that immediate value on another minion, so it basically is cutting your odds against silences, right? So if you play the Spirit of the Tiger and then Spike Ridge Steed it, and then you get a 6/6, now your opponent playing a silence on their following turn is not a big tempo loss for you. All of a sudden, they got rid of 2 power, but you still have 6 on board. So I think that's a huge bonus to this card, is the fact that it's almost like pseudo protection from silence, like you're gaining value anyway. I love this card. It's an easy thing just to throw stuff at sometimes to get value out of your spells. Even I don't think I would play it, but the Echo spell for Paladin, the bells.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You can just make a board.
Yeah, you can just make an army of 2/2s.
But some of those 2/2s could be 4/4s or 3/4s. You can just go to town with that. I love this card. I think I'm gonna give it an 8 because it's a lot of protection for silence for a deck that really relies on playing spells aggressively, but also at getting some value from it. So I think this will be a good tool later for Paladin. I don't see it in Quest because I just think Quest is horrible, and it's a waste of a card in your opening hand. But I think this is a great value generator for Paladin with their spells.
Yeah. So the only issue I see with this card, because my immediate thought when I saw this card was, this is insane with Blessing of Kings and Spike Ridge Steed. Because you get the immediate value on a body, right? You turn Blessing of Kings into a 4-mana 8/8. But Blessing of Kings is already valued at having basically 4 charge damage attached to it, because you're playing on a minion that was in play already most of the time. So then it's a 4-mana 8/8 with 4 charge damage. That's really, really strong. And, plus whatever the body was, which in this case it'd be Spirit of the Tiger. So you have a 4/7 and a 4/4 and deal 4 charge damage. Super, super strong. And then it just scales with Spike Ridge Steed, obviously. The question is, would I play this card over the multitude of insane 4-drops that Paladin has access to? And I'm not really sure. This card competes with the card we just went over, the Zendalari Templar. I don't know if they're supposed to be in different decks. Maybe, I think Zandalari is going to be in a lot of Paladin decks is the thing. I really think that card's going to be Paladin defining for a long time, and I'm just not sure if this can make the cut. Maybe there's a deck where the emphasis is less on healing and more on immediate value, like a more aggressive, tempo-y mid-range Paladin. And in something like that, this card is the straight nuts. If you have this into a buff spell, it's the straight nuts. It's so much value. I think I'm gonna rate it a 7 because I'm just not sure if we can fit it. We still have to play True Silver and everything. Consecration, like it's just so hard to fit it all. You're gonna be playing Corpse Taker if you're playing Zendalari. Like maybe this just fits in a different kind of deck than Heal Paladin. But I think card's absolutely insane. If you get a single buff spell off on it.
Okay. What did you say your rating was, sorry?
7. I decided with a 7 because I'm not 100% that it'll actually be better than the 4 drops we have access to.
Alright. 3 mana timeout. Your hero is immune until your next turn.
Boom. There it is.
10 stars.
10.
There's something powerful with the card Time Walk in case you've played Magic or any other game.
Oh, yes.
I know this doesn't exactly take an extra turn after this one, but it literally always says you get to take an extra turn after this one. You can play it like, okay, the definition of immune is can't take damage, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Damn it, so you can't play it like, I'm gonna do this before Mechathune Priest goes off and then, like, kill them. That'd be so cool. But this card is just so stupidly powerful. We keep talking about Control Paladin. Well, this is a Control Paladin card. This is Time Walk in a control deck. Because they just want to get to a higher mana cost. It does cost 3, but like, imagine it's turn 5. And I'm like, okay, I got this Consecrate and I got this Equality. And I play Timeout, and now I always get to Consecrate and Equality. Like, that's insane. Just being able to make sure you get to the threat that you need. And because of this, yeah, I think it's a 10-star card. I think Control Paladin plays 2 of this, and I think it's absolutely busted. I think it's insane. This effect is so powerful. That, yeah, 10 stars.
So I'm going to start out by saying I agree. I'm also going to start out with saying that I think it's worse than Ice Block.
That's a really, like, okay thing to say, because Ice Block is Ice Block.
And a lot of people have been comparing this to Ice Block ever since they revealed this card a couple of weeks ago. And the one big difference this card has to Ice Block is Ice Block you can set up preemptively and have a full 10 mana to work with to kill your opponent.
Yeah.
Time Walk requires it to be played that turn, leaving you with 7 mana to work with, which changes math for everything. Almost every OTK in Hearthstone has required at least 9 mana. So Timeout will probably keep any OTK shenanigans from happening, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but it does. So I think that makes it worse than Ice Block. However, it's a card that says I don't die. A card that says not only I don't die, but you don't get to make any pressure on my face whatsoever. If I want to stay at 20 and just time out you so I can board clear you next turn because I don't have anything worth putting on the board, so be it. Like, that's still an insanely strong effect in a game like Hearthstone. I'm going to give it 9. And that's because it's an incredibly strong tool for Control Paladin. It's going to be in every Control Paladin list, but only Control Paladin list, and I don't think it creates any potential for like insane combos to happen. It's just like an amazing survivability tool that Paladin wanted for a long time.
Can I just add quickly that I think you're missing one thing, and that's the fact that the Uther combo deck definitely wants it as well. But we don't know how good that deck is. Although it definitely gets better with these new cards.
It gets better. I just don't see me wanting to. I don't see that being a deck. Is where now if that becomes a deck, then like well let's. curiosity, like how does timeout work with that to help you initiate your combo? Because I guess
It
you can
doesn't. It just keeps you alive an extra turn.
Yeah, and that's I guess where at the end of the day where I'm looking at is it's not enabling anything. It's just a really 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 good don't die tool because it says that.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. I love the card. Like I've been wanting a card like that for a long time for Paladin, so I'm thrilled for it.
I'm gonna be the negative Nancy here.
Get
I
out.
think I'm going to rate this card an 8.
What?
And obviously, this is a very strong card effect, but it's an entire card, and I feel like there is going to be situations where this is not super relevant. Obviously, it basically is. I don't like quite comparing it to Time Walk because like your opponent, like it doesn't ramp you, right? Your opponent still gets an entire turn of development if you do this. Now, if your goal is to survive from turns, 2, 3, and 4 onto like your equality cons turns or your equality pyro turns against aggro, yeah, this card's probably just going to win you the game in those spots. But in situations where you're already ahead, this card basically does nothing. So I think the effect is extremely powerful, but I also think it's only... I don't know how to put it. It's really good at what it does, right? And what it does is buy you a turn to get to what I'm assuming needs to be an AoE. Obviously, you'll have fringe situations where, like, you have 2-turn lethal on board and your opponent decides to go all face, and you're like, timeout, got him. Got him with the 2-turn lethal. But, yeah, I think it's very strong. I don't think it's a hit out of the park. I want to put it at 8 out of 10.
Okay. Let's look at our next card. Flash of Light. 2 mana, restore 4 health, draw a card. So, this looks an awful lot like Shield Block, which is 3 mana, gain 5 armor, draw a card. In Paladin, they're making it right now, especially with the next card we're going to look at with damaging yourself and stuff, that restoring health and armor are going to be very similar to each other in Paladin, unlike, say, Priest versus Warrior, where, let's be real, armor's like almost basically strictly better. Where the Paladin's going to be able to make up the difference with some of its cards that between health and armor. So if we compare this to Shield Block, it's 1 less mana for 1 less health. And because of that, I think this card is very good if we compare it to Shield Block. And Shield Block is a good card. So we don't have a card like Shield Slam in Paladin for like the extra payoff or enablement, but we do have the 4-drop we looked at earlier. So I think I will happily pay 2 mana to gain 4 and draw a card in Paladin, and control Paladin, so I think this is like an 8-star card, and I don't see control Paladin ever not playing 2. I think this card is very, very good for that deck, which doesn't have much card draw.
Yeah, I love this card. It's funny enough, I think this might be one of my favorite cards for Paladin, as like boring as the card is. It's just so efficient at what it does, right? So like you compared with Shield Block, it's statted better than Shield Block, right? Because you're getting
it's more efficient.
Yeah, so you're getting 2 health for 1 mana in drawing a card, opposed to 1 3/4 Shield Block ends up being or whatever. The big thing I want to note with this whole Heal Paladin strat is that this restores 4 health and cantrips. So this card effectively doesn't cost you a card, which is amazing. And 2, Zandalari says the 4/4 Zandalari Templar says if you restore 10 health this game. That doesn't say hero health.
Yeah.
That's any health.
Yeah.
So like there is a reasonable scenario where like you flash of light something and then just drop an 8/8 with taunt. And that sounds like crazy powerful and also like a really cool synergy that like very flavorful for Paladin. So I'm a big fan of the card. I think it's highly efficient. It could be utilized in a lot of different ways. I'm giving it a 9 because it's just one of the best healing tools I've seen ever printed.
Yeah, It's super versatile. You can heal yourself. You can, dude. If you're playing Control Paladin, legit, and your opponent plays a Kobold Librarian on turn 1, you can just heal their
Yeah,
face.
heal their face every time.
Yep, it's so good actually. I think I'm gonna put it at 8 out of 10. It's kind of limited by the fact that it's 2 mana, so it can only be so powerful. But at 2 mana, it's just extremely good value. Replaces itself, heals for 4. We've already talked about how good healing archetypes might be. Also synergizes with the Spirit of the Tiger for what it's worth. So yeah, I think this card's just really powerful, and it's going to be in a lot of Paladin decks. Actually, I might rate this card a 9. What'd you guys rate it?
I went 8, he went 9.
I'll go 9, I suppose. It's really strong, but it's a pretty big tempo loss, actually. No, 8. We'll do 8. 8 out of 10. Final answer.
Okay, our last Paladin card, Bloodclaw. 1 mana, 2/2 weapon, which that's insane. Battlecry, deal 5 to your hero. So,
oh no, what a downside.
I will just say this is probably 1 mana, kill 2 of your opponent's early plays, and take approximately 9 damage total. I'd play that card a lot of the time. And I think Odd Paladin is so excited to get another weapon that's so good. This also is good on Heal Paladin because it's a way to damage yourself, which is great. I don't really think there's a lot to say about this card because a 2/2 weapon for 1 is good. The Battlecry is an upside in subdecks. The Battlecry is like a non-factor in like Odd Paladin most of the time, and I just think it's extremely good. So I'm going to rate this 9 stars. I think this card is just incredible. And it's exactly the type of card that both Odd Paladin and Heal Paladin want.
Yeah, Bloodclaw. It's an aggro tool for aggro paladin. It's insanely good at clearing the board and dealing damage. It's a great tool for a mid-range paladin deck to control the board, and it's a great tool for a late-game paladin to control the board and then heal later. I think every paladin that's not even will run this card. It's on turn 1 too. You just play it. You just play it and get ready to kill whatever your opponent plays. I think it might be the best card Paladin got overall. Because it's just like how it fits into every Paladin list. I'm giving it a 10 because I think it's going to be played everywhere. I think it's just going to be in every Paladin list that's not even.
GHP, what was your rating? I don't even know if I heard it.
9.
9, and Tyrant wrote it a 10. I'm not quite ready to give this card a 10, but it is extremely powerful. It's obviously a bad top deck in the late game. That's the main downside I see of it. But even so, at 2 attack, it can only be so bad. It really can. Yeah, just solid overall, really, really well statted weapon for 1 mana. So I'll give it a 9.
Okay, so that's all of our Paladin cards. I think Paladin gets a lot in this set.
Yes.
Yes, they do.
Paladin is gonna be fun.
Also, Paladin's cards are fun and interesting. They're not just good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think some of the effects are really unique. The Immortal Prelate, I'm sure people will find more to do with it than what we mentioned.